Do as I bid! Clan Pestilence Supreme!
Also known as the Plague Monks, Clan Pestilens are the disciples of disease and initiates of infection. Being arguably the most feared of the four great Skaven clans by allies and foes alike, their power and grip is vast, and the infections and poxes they spread across the world are terrible. Clan Pestilens focuses on being the embodiment of the great horned rat, and what they believe is their most remarkable attribute: the ability to create, control, and spread plagues. All riddled with disease and contagion, the Skaven of Clan Pestilens worship their god fervently, and their main objective and drive is to spread the pestilence to the world. It is said that this powerful clan possesses a book named the Liber Bubonicus, which lists all the diseases known to man, and many unknown besides. As instructed by their foul god, the Plague Monks are dedicated to spreading pestilence and plague amongst the cities of men. In this episode, we will explore the main motives that drive Clan Pestilens, and how they wage war against the other races of the world, and even their own Skaven cousins. We will go through their dark origins, and where they stand now. Before we begin, we want to extend a special thanks to all supporters of the channel, as it is thanks to them we were able to commission this special artwork for this episode. We thank you for watching, sharing, commenting, and supporting the channel. We hope you enjoy this episode. Having their dark origins in the jungle continent of Lustria many centuries ago, the Plague Monks are the main core that forms the strength and might of Clan Pestilens. These are wicked creatures, and they are already immune to pain and disease, as they have embraced them in their bodies, all in reverence to the great horned rat that provides them with the resilience to resist the toxic diseases they carry. They serve their god of pestilence with such devotion that they can be said to be religious zealots in their own right. They inflict themselves with sickness, and they gain strength from it. They have been responsible for the bloody Skaven civil wars that have involved the entire Under-Empire, and the number of lives of ratmen and other creatures lost to these conflicts are simply too terrible, if not impossible, to tell. The disciples of decay spread their contagions with fervor, and they employ war machines, mutated creatures, special weapons, and magic to spread the virulence to their enemies and even fellow ratmen alike. For they believe that in spreading pestilence, they are rewarded by the great horned rat in return. When the Skaven want to spread their diseases upon the enemy, they start by infecting their cities. They stealthily intoxicate the wells, sewers, tunnels, and food deposits to make sickness appear amongst the unsuspecting victims, before any battle or confrontation has truly begun. The impact of these actions often range from a hit on valuable supplies, lowered morale, to even many intoxicated casualties. On the field of battle, lines of censer bearers wield sacred plague censers to spread virulence and toxic gases on the enemy ranks, oftentimes resulting in their victims falling prey to the plague that suffocates their lungs and blinds their vision. High above, corrosive substances fired from towering plague claw catapults fly over the battle lines, leaving a trail of deadly greenish smoke behind. Upon impact, deadly fumes and substances spread throughout the ranks of enemies, filling their lungs with foul fluid and choking them to death. Despair begins to reign as the main battle line of Skaven close the distance. As they approach, their victims are already weak in body and spirit, the air choked with toxic gas. In close combat, the Plague Monks and Censer Bearers are truly fanatical in their fighting, attacking with their rusted swords and spiked flails. They go on murderous rampages, frenzied even further by the exotic combination of toxic fumes, choking gases, and many other unknown substances. They fight while endlessly screaming rites of infection towards their foe. This can drive any man to insanity, if he isn't already broken from the gratuity of pestilence and death that surround him. Above the chaotic noise of battle, a dreadful bell tolls. The horrific sound source is an ominous bell attached to the top of the plague furnaces. Deadly altars dedicated to the great horned rat that the Skaven push into battle to spread disease, virulence, and terror with a massive wrecking ball that swings back and forth in an arc of death. A cloud of noxious gases envelop this unholy construct as it opens gaps in the enemy's formations. It is said that the Skaven, even the most trained of the Vermintide, are not necessarily the most expert of fighters, but when fighting in overwhelming numbers, they can be unstoppable. It is with pure force of numbers and the help of deadly substances that Clan Pestilence wages war. And uncountable are the lives that have been lost to this great major clan. The physical appearance of the foul Skaven that can form this clan is oftentimes hideous. They carry a nauseating stench, and to touch them is to be tainted with horrific disease. Many of the victims that come into contact with a plague monk or a plague weapon are known to suffer agonizing deaths, while traditional healing methods and medicines do not work most times. One notorious Skaven, who is a testament to the power of the Great Horned Rat, is the legendary Disciple of Decay, known as Lord Skrolk. This being is corrupted and twisted to the core, and is alive despite having lived longer than any of his kind. Innumerable maladies and diseases plague his body, and he drips pus and toxic fluids. The fact that he still walks and is the Plaguelord of Clan Pestilence is evidence enough that their foul god grants endurance, power, resilience, and longer life to the truly devout. Wherever Lord Skrolk walks, the air turns black, and living things are left dying in his wake, as the putrescent aura he carries is truly poisonous. In fact, he is also known as the disease that walks. He leads the deadly armies of Clan Pestilence from the front, unleashing his fury mercilessly against the ones who stand against him. But to understand how this clan was born, and how they ascended to being one of the most prominent powers of the Under Empire, one must explore their origins, from their inception to their trials in Lustria, and their return to the old world. dwarf and man fought to the last, but none of those who dwelt in Kavsar would live to see that battle past. Tearing, biting, all-devouring, the Skaven chewed on flesh and bone. The man and dwarf did fall together, their blood spilled over the ancient stone. The story of the Skaven is little known to the outside world, for there are few who wish to bear such damned knowledge, and fewer still who do and are considered sane by the polite society. Indeed, even for the Skaven themselves, their history matters little, for they have short memory. What really matters is the time between now and when their ultimate master plan to dominate the world will bear fruit. They think of the past only in the matter of who stood in their way, and as such, who they need to get rid of to achieve their destiny. But there is one piece of literature that is universally agreed to be the tale of the origin of this most disgusting of races. The doom that came to Kavsar. The city that once bore that name was located between the Irana Mountains to the north and the Chilean Sea to the south. Mentioned in the epic poem already cited, originally written in the dwarf tongue of Khalid, whose original writer is lost to history. The city was founded by one of the first tribes of humans, and joined by a wandering clan of dwarves. The city was beyond anything else human-made when it came to architecture and engineering. Most famously, it had one single massive temple in the center of the city, a nice skyscraping tower, but it was never finished. For the further it got from the ground, the more difficult it was to build. That was until a stranger arrived and offered to finish the building in a single night, under the condition that he placed a shrine to his own god at the top. The humans agreed to these conditions, and the stranger got to work. The following night, the tower was complete to the surprise of all, and a massive bell was placed on top of it, and the mysterious man was no more. From that cursed night, the bell tolled 13 times, and doom fell over the city. Every night the bell tolled 13 times, as rain and pestilence arrived, and the rats of the city grew hungry, bold, and big. The rain never stopped. The food ran out. And the very citizens of Kavsar were hunted by giant rats. Eventually, the rats rose up in a massive tide and ate whatever was left of the population. Pestilence, as one can see, is part of the very creation of the Skaven race. And Clan Pestilens in particular would embrace it like no other. In the time that it took to turn Kavsar into what it is now known as Skavenblight, warpstone rained from the skies, and the Skaven rejoiced in it. But eventually, the mines of that warped mineral ran out, and overpopulation was so high that cannibalism among Skaven had become a tradition to weave out the weak and sustain themselves. And so the first wave of Skaven migration began. Throughout the old world did they spread like a cancer that ate its way deep beneath the bowels of civilizations in vast territories. Araby, the Southlands, and even far-off Cathay was not far enough for the Skaven to travel. And even the wet jungles of Lustria saw a wave of Skaven migration. And those who went there would indeed be very special. This period of early expansion was later called the Great Sniff.
Such a paradise, unblemished, pure. It must be gifted the touch of Pestilence. That the reptile things attack me for this is blasphemy.
It happened that the Skaven that traveled to Lustria found themselves immediately besieged on all sides by flesh-devouring parasites, savage lizardmen who were the true owners and defenders of Lustria, wandering and massive carnivorous creatures, and of course, tropical diseases, the latter of which came to be seen as a test sent by their unholy god, the Horned Rat. For only the strong would survive it. The diseases were terrible, and the Skaven died faster than they could reproduce. Eventually, the Skaven in Lustria came to believe that they had to find victims to sacrifice in the name of the Horned Rat, for the deity to grant them the gifts and the necessary strength to endure the many diseases that were assailing them. If they revered the very infections and poxes that were killing them, they would be spared. And so they did. Out of dire desperation and pain, the plague monks were born. The Skaven did what they always do. They infested every corner, every open niche they occupied. And with only a few of their short generations, they developed immunity to the deadly plagues. They mutated and came to see these wicked alterations as holy gifts of their disgusting god. So it was that the Cult of Decay, a subset of the mainstream Skaven religion, was born. In the case of the Lizardmen, they too had a new deity they worshipped. Tehenwain, also known as the Prophet of Sotek, rallied a massive army under his banner, proclaiming that only by sacrificing the blood of the rats to their serpent god Sotek would they be liberated from the vile Skaven race that threatened their existence. The new prophet preached that Sotek would only surface if his servants spilled the blood of millions of ratmen in his name. And so they did. The Lizardmen's vast armies, conformed of beasts of all sizes, marched across Lustria to ambush the vermin race in their lairs and underground tunnels. In return, the Lizardmen's cities and temples were attacked by the Skaven armies, and thousands upon thousands of cold-blooded ones were left riddled with agonizing diseases that had no cure. During the 100 years of this terrible war of attrition between the Rat and the Serpent, uncountable Lizardmen and Skaven were slaughtered. This is recorded as one of the bloodiest conflicts in all of the lore, for the blood ran in rivers in Lustria, and the death toll was terrible. After their lands had been truly and completely spent by their rotting ways, and the cruel war with the Lizardmen was coming to a close, the so-called plague monks decided to return to their origins. And so the great migration of Clan Pestilens back to the old world took place. After weeks of travel in ramshackle boats made of wood and spare materials, they made landfall in the Southlands, establishing a new stronghold there. Shortly after, the Lords of Decay sent emissaries to Skaven Blight to announce their return and their intention to spread the new cult of decay. The Council of 13 had no need for a new faction, and murdered the Fellowship on the spot, sending back their severed heads as a lesson of humility. As a response, the Lords of Decay seized the human city of Bagrusa in what seemed to be a desperate fit of anger. But the true objective was the Skaven stronghold of Clan Murkit beneath the city. For months, they surrounded the rat burrows around them, placing cauldrons filled with warpstone brews, so foul we shall not name them here. For to even mention them brings terrible bad luck. The noxious gases flow down the tunnels, flooding them with terrible disease and rot. The few who ran to the surface were captured and enslaved. The rest turned into rotting chunks of meat. From that siege, only very few had escaped, including Lord Murkit and a few of his lieutenants. In retaliation, the Council of 13 sent innumerable clan rats, supported by warlock engineers and their terrible technology. But they had been too slow. For even before the army left Skaven Blight, numerous warlord clans of the Southlands had turned to the side of the Plaguelords in fear of their brutal ways. The underways of the Skaven Empire had broken into a full civil war. As the Council lost more and more clans to the cause of the Cult of Decay. Indeed, opportunistic clans regularly switched sides, gnawing at the opportunities that the chaotic conflict presented. But eventually, the entirety of the Southlands was lost to the control of the Plaguelords. The Under-Empire was divided into two hemispheres. The South under control of the Lords of Decay, and the Old World under control of the Council of 13. This struggle lasted for 400 years, and it brought destruction, misery, and above all, decay to the entirety of the Southlands. Everything changed with the return of yet another powerful clan from far away. Clan Eshin, coming all the way from Cathay, trained in the ways of subterfuge and assassination like no other in the entire world. They pledged allegiance to the Council and set to work undermining Clan Pestilens' control of the Southlands. Clad in all black, and with weapons so deadly they are rumored to be able to kill demigods, they slowly but surely set the unruly clans back under the control of the Council. Seeing that they were losing ground quickly, Clan Pestilens was forced into the negotiation table, and so they requested a full audience with the Council of 13. Nurglitch, the most powerful Lord of Decay, traveled north to Skaven Blight. Uncountable assassination attempts on his life were made. In uncountable times did he come off unscathed on the other side, the assassins suffering horrible, plague-ridden fates. Eventually he did arrive to Skaven Blight, and there he asked to be added to the Council, offering his and his clan's expertise to be used by them.
I kill dwarf things in Pillar City. No! Clan wars go to Southlands.
hunt for Warpstone. More's our puppet minion. Pestilence infest Lustria. Yes, yes. But all Warpstone for council plan.
As insurance, he revealed that he and his followers had brought with them a virulent strain of yellow skull fever, and should an agreement not be made, he would release it inside Skaven Blight, most likely wiping out the entire council and most of the Skaven race itself. What a favor to the world that would be, but alas, it would not come to pass. For Nurglich proved himself to be strong enough to pass the trial of combat, slaying one of the council members and taking his place. So it was that after hundreds of years of civil war, the Under Empire was united once more, now presenting a bigger threat than ever for the rest of the world. The Empire had very little awareness of the menace below their own civilization. Indeed, 1,000 years after Sigmar had departed, and the Empire had already contained many of the enemies from outside, there came a calamity that was born from within. Indeed, when Boris Goldgather, arguably the most corrupt emperor in history, was on the throne and the provinces were in open civil war, the Skaven struck. 500 years in the making, the evil scheme of the Skaven's first blow was invisible, as a terrible outbreak of Black Death started in Null. Many died from the plague, and its spread was blamed on Talayan merchants. It was the doing of Clan Pestilens once again. Terrible and horrible was the efficiency of the new weaponry of the Council. Thanks to Clan Pestilens, 3 out of 4 Imperial citizens had perished even before any sword was drawn. This single clan had brought the mightiest human nation of the old world to its knees with a deadly plague. And it was only by the blessings of Sigmar and Ulrich that they survived, thanks to Mandred's Skaven Slayer. Clan Pestilens was not satisfied, for it was their holy prerogative to spread the plagues. 700 years after the invasion of the Empire, the deadly Red Pox was unleashed in Bretonia. It first appeared in the dukedom of Bordelot, before spreading to Brionne, and east to the Brienne River, and south into Talea. Once more, the Skaven's terrible and extremely efficient strategy was put into deadly practice. They would wait until the human kingdoms were weak and poor from the plague, riddled with depopulation and starvation. Then they would attack with full force. And so it was. They emerged as a deadly vermintide, consuming it all. They sacked Brienne and Miragliano, and lay siege to Canel. But the lords of northern Bretonia were brave, and chivalry drove them. As such, they rallied their armies quickly, much quicker than the Empire had done centuries before, and attacked in an epic and valiant charge. Many knights fell, as many oaths were taken and subsequently accomplished. But the result was worth it. They had driven the Skaven back to their damned burrows. The cost was high, though, and it took the Bretonians, nobles and peasants alike, many years to recover. This was by no means the last time Clan Pestilens would act, for they believe wholeheartedly that their fellow ratmen had been led astray by the Greyseers, and that the way of the plague is the true way of worshipping the horned rat. Indeed, even now, centuries after the civil war that they had caused, Clan Pestilens' ultimate goal is to bring the rest of the Under Empire under their fold, and they have not stopped working towards that goal. Of course, the clan does this all in secrecy, without being labeled an all-out heretic by the Greyseers, to avoid yet another devastating civil war. But make no mistake, their goal is total submission of the entirety of the Skaven race, and only when they achieve this goal, the Great Ascendancy will begin, where the horned rat manifests into the world, and all the Skaven race will ascend to the surface as a whole to take what is rightfully theirs, the entire world. On this channel, we are putting together narrative Total War cinematic battles and Warhammer lore videos. A special thank you goes to our Patreon supporters who help us in the making of more content. You can also join Patreon and earn extra perks while supporting the videos to come. Find the link in the description below. Make sure to subscribe, and thank you for watching. See you on the next one.